Good evening and welcome back to Small Group. We're glad you're here. My name is Megan and this is Rob, and we want to go ahead and dive right in because I'm excited about what we're going to do this evening and where the conversation is going to go. So one of the things that we have a tendency to do in these types of seasons is maybe internalize our questions or internalize our conversation, and it doesn't always externalize or verbally process itself out loud. Right. But I believe in the midst of all of this, there's value in asking questions. There's value in seeking out wisdom and learning from one another, but most of all, asking the Lord those questions. But maybe in these seasons that are hard, that may not be your first tendency. So we want to look at a particular passage tonight, and we want for you to think about it critically and think about where you're at in that. But I'm going to go ahead and read from Luke chapter 7, and then Rob and I are going to unpack it a little bit.
We're going to try to unpack it a little bit.
Just a little bit.
In a short amount of time we got.
So I'm going to read from Luke chapter 7, verses 18 through 23. Then the disciples of John reported to him concerning all these things. And John, calling two of his disciples to him, sent them to Jesus, saying, "Are you the coming one, or do we need to look for another?" And when the men had come to him, being Jesus, they said, "John the Baptist has sent us to you, saying, 'Are you the coming one, or do we look for another?' And that very hour he cured many of infirmities, afflictions, and evil spirits, and to many blind he gave sight. And Jesus answered and said to them, 'Go and tell John the things that you have seen and heard, that the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, the poor have the gospel preached to them.'" Yeah. So as we're looking at this and we're reading through this passage, obviously there are spiritual aspects and addresses to every situation that we face. So when you look at this, what stands out to you, Rob?
I think, the first thing that really stands out to me is this is John the Baptist. Yeah. We're talking about one of the most significant characters of the New Testament.
Right.
This is the same guy who probably just a few chapters earlier, right? Mm-hmm. In chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, as we learn about Jesus, John is the one who says, "Hey, this is the guy whose shoes I'm unworthy to unlatch."
Right.
Right? So he moved from declaring to questioning, it seems like pretty quickly.
Right.
But I think it's significant that this is John the Baptist who is really struggling in this moment, maybe with his faith, maybe with his place in it, because we find out in Luke chapter 3 that he's most likely, and in Matthew's record as well, that John is most likely in jail at this point.
Right.
And so he's not seeing all the things that Jesus is doing on the outside. He's only getting these reports.
Right.
And so he's struggling with his own faith, and he's trying to really decide, hey, is this the Messiah? Mm-hmm. Because I think John has an expectation, as a lot of Jews did at that time, what the Messiah was supposed to be.
Right.
And what he was supposed to do, especially with Roman government and, those earthly kingdoms, those kinds of things. And so I think in this moment, he's really struggling with this question, God, why are you allowing this to happen to me? Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably a question that we're all asking in situations and moments like this, which is respectable.
Right. Yeah.
Why is this happening? Mm-hmm. But I think as you and I have kind of talked about it this week, that there may be a different kind of question that we may need to ask, right?
Yeah.
And Louis Giglio kind of talked about this in one of his talks that you brought up to me, and it's a different kind of question.
Yeah.
What if God is trying to get our attention?
Not just God, a good God.
A good God.
Yeah.
Right, a good God. Why would a good God allow this to happen? It's a very human question, very carnal question, normal.
Yeah.
And then a different question is, what is a good God trying to get our attention?
Yeah.
Different kinds of questions, and I think John kind of wrestles through that whole process, right from this very passage. So.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting, even though there are different kinds of questions, what's interesting is John was willing to ask the question.
Yes.
So even from jail, he sent disciples to say, "Hey, are you the one, or do we look for another?" So it wasn't that John was sitting in jail thinking, "Oh, am I going to be in trouble? Is this?"
Right.
He boldly asked.
Right.
He sent that question to Jesus.
Right.
And while Jesus didn't give the direct answer, what Jesus did do was answer it by way of showing, by way of saying, look around, tell John what you've seen here.
And what you've heard.
Yeah,
tell John what you've seen and what you've heard. So It's Jesus's actions plus Jesus's teaching
Right.
that he's affirming in that
Right.
moment. What you've seen and what you've heard. So those two things kind of they correlate together. Why would and we didn't even talk about this, and maybe this is not the right place to bring it up, but why didn't Jesus just say yes? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Why didn't Jesus just say yes in this moment? Yeah, tell him I'm the guy.
Would he have taken that? Would the yes have been, okay, but why is this not happening for me?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at you do these things for other people. Why are you not doing it for me?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't begin to answer because I'm not in John's scenario, but I mean, I think it's a fair question. Why was it just not a yes?
Yeah.
But I also wonder, okay, so if we're asking questions, how do we approach that? Maybe we don't even know how to ask questions because will it be accepted? What does it look like? How do we go about it? So I think that's something else that I want for us to look at. How when we come before the Lord, is there a way to do it? Is there a wrong way? Is there a right way?
Yeah, is there a right way to ask the questions, or maybe a different consideration is, what question should we be asking?
Yeah.
In this kind of moment, right? So John is in the dilemma that we're all facing sort of now. Obviously not to the same degree.
Right.
We're not being beheaded
No.
anytime soon that I'm aware of. But fortunately, but I think obviously the situation was different, but John was still asking the right question, not just a question, but the right question. And I think, early on, probably a lot of us, as we deal with the pain and the loss, which we'll probably talk about here in a few minutes, but it may force us to ask the wrong questions. And so is there a proper way to come before him in moments like these and these kinds of dilemmas in life generally? Is there a right way to do that? Is there a right way to ask those questions?
I think in my own, as I've journeyed with the Lord, one of the things that's a tension for me. When I come before the Lord and I'm asking questions, am I doing so with the idea still in mind that this is the creator of the universe? Yes, does he want me to be intimately willing to approach him? Absolutely. Does he call me beloved? Yes. But in the same breath, do I recognize that in asking my questions, is there a reverence, or is it just kind of a flippant whatever?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the tone or the posture that I'm asking?
So there's a casual versus reverent sort of tension there because I think, you and I have talked about this. There's a very open sort of conversation that says you just approach God like he's your best friend, like he's sitting beside you while you're eating your breakfast, your pancakes, and you just say, hey, what's up? And you have this dialogue, and we encourage that because, we even teach prayer like that. Like, hey, you just talk to him like you talk to your friend, and that's great. But I think you're on a point where at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, he's still a holy God, a sovereign God, a righteous God. Doesn't mean we need to pray in King James or talk to him in thous and these, but an acknowledgement simply of who he is, especially in situations where it's difficult or it's a crisis, maybe like what we're facing now. There's a sense of reverence and awe that I think comes with asking God questions like that. What's something else? So, we talked a little bit about pain and loss, right? So how does that equate into this conversation as we approach God? Where do pain and loss fit because we're experiencing it?
I think that the Lord cares deeply about that pain and that loss, and I think that is something that he does want us to bring to him. And there's not a filter that says, okay, bring it to me once you've sorted through it, or bring it to me when you're not crying, or no, I don't think that he says that. I do think that he does want us to bring that, but I also think there has to be the recognition that on our part, that the journey I am walking won't be the same journey that you are walking. Because when I look at what John is doing, he's asking God, are you the one or is there another? Because he was seeing everyone else be healed, be set free, all of these things, but that wasn't happening in his life. He was still in the jail cell and beheading was coming. So I'm wondering if when we bring our pain and loss, we're to bring it with the anticipation of knowing what the Lord has for us in this. Not
Yeah.
necessarily what he has for the person to the right or to the left, but what does the Lord have for us in this? Where does he want to meet us in this?
Yeah.
You know, those are some of my questions.
Yeah, and I think also as we, and this is just across the board in general, the more we focus on our pain, the more we focus on our loss, the less we are able to see what God is actually doing around us, right?
Right.
So, and I think this kind of goes back a little bit to what Louis was saying in his conversation is God getting our attention, right? So, are we allowing in the midst of our pain and our loss, which we genuinely are experiencing?
Yes.
Are we allowing ourselves to see where He is moving,
Right.
how He is healing, how He is speaking, how He is breathing life into other people, into other communities, and that's a difficult tension because we want to focus on what we're experiencing.
Right. I think about social media right now
Yeah.
and the different countries that, or people that have posted the different places that are singing "Because He Lives, I Can Face Tomorrow."
Yeah.
Would we be so inclined to see that? Can we see it as Him working? Or are we looking elsewhere?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That is something that I wonder about,
These are great questions for other people to discuss.
But I think Dr. Hayes also talks about this
Yes.
on a regular basis. And the quote that he uses is confront the brutal facts, but never
Lose hope. Confront the brutal facts, but never lose hope. So thank you, Dr. Hayes, for that. That begs the question, though, where does hope rest?
Right. Ultimately, I think that's the evaluation in my own heart when I stand before the Lord and I ask the Lord these questions. Why am I frustrated? Or why is my hope in my schedule and the fact that I have the structure and these things happen in this place and these things happen in this place? Or does my hope lie in you, Lord?
In His sovereignty.
Yes.
In His absoluteness.
Right.
In His omnis. All the omnis, right,
Right.
apply here, right? So
Exactly.
And this is a great season for us to really lean into that, I think. I mean, just that understanding of what true hope is, right? Hope is easy when things are well,
Right.
right? And we're not trying to certainly attack or degrade someone's faith. That's not our point.
No. No.
But certainly there's a different sense or a different understanding or a different experience of hope when we're in the midst of something that's difficult, when you're in a John the Baptist type situation, right? Hope
Right.
looks radically different.
Right.
And I think that's okay,
Yes.
right? I think we need to be okay with that, understanding that maybe some of the preconceived notions that we had about faith or hope coming into this are different now.
Yeah.
Which really leads to the kind of the fourth point of how do we ask God these hard questions in times like this is we cannot presuppose the answers or even attempt to prescribe what those answers should look like
Right.
when we approach God with these kinds of questions.
Right. Right. I think and our tendency might be, my tendency is, okay, what is so-and-so saying about this? Or what is so-and-so
Right.
saying about this? And I have to remember that their walk with the Lord and what they're sharing is based on their relationship with the Lord because
Right.
they've gone and asked Him those questions or they've sat with Him. So while, yes, that does inform and there's wisdom in that, ultimately it has to be my walk with the Lord. Where do I come before the Lord and say, how do I sort through what is happening here? How do I learn how to do this new way of life with family again? Or maybe without a job, and that's a deep loss because I also have responsibilities and bills.
Yeah.
How do I do this? You
Yeah.
know? So that willingness to come before the Lord and allow Him and allow yourself to be in that relationship to ask.
Yeah. And again, I think it's so important for us to understand that the answers may not come in the form or the fashion in which we expect them to.
No.
I forwarded you an article even this morning from N.T. Wright, and I wish we just had time to go through that, but it's basically saying that there may not be an answer to this, right? The whole thing may be a calling, and it's not that God designed it intentionally this way. It's just we take advantage of the crises that come in our lives, because life happens, right? You get a flat tire, right? So this is another great moment for us to really dig into this opportunity we have to discover the fullness of who Christ really is, right? Without any preconceived notions of what that's supposed to look like.
Right.
Because then it's not faith, it's something other than that. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So I think those are really good points. And I think the last couple of weeks we've been really encouraging you, small groups and floor leaders and resident chaplains and RDs and RAs and everybody else involved, right? We've been really encouraging you guys to meet with the Lord, to sit down, to talk with Him, and to really get to know Him in a different way maybe than what you have before. And this is a great opportunity to do that. So, and we understand that right now that may be hard to do. So we're going to encourage you from this scripture. Now, this was a very unlikely passage I would have thought of. I'll give the credit to Megan on this one, but I just thought it was such a cool story when you brought it up about John the Baptist and what he was facing, where he was in the moment that he was facing it, and the question that he asked in the midst of it.
So in small group, one of the things we ultimately want is for our students and anyone who's willing to engage it. We have a couple different pillars that we shoot for, and two of them are deepening your faith and finding your voice. And deepening your faith. When I think about John, just his boldness to ask blows me away.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, because Jesus was in person, that Jesus listened to the question. He heard the question.
This was the guy that baptized Jesus.
Right. He still heard the question. And so where can we, even in the rawness of the moment, bring the questions and not just leave them at surface questions, but go below it and trust that the Lord is willing to go.
And that's a practice. That's awkward sometimes to go below the surface questions. Because we don't know how to ask them. We've never had to. But we're learning how to do that now. So I think, as we kind of close out this session, we're quickly running out of time. But there are three kind of basic questions that we want you to talk about tonight in your small groups, right? So the first one is, and we can unpack these as much as you want to for them, but the first one is, where is God getting your attention right now? Right? Where is He getting your attention right now? The second one, what kind of questions do you need to be asking the Lord right now?
And I would tag on to that, what does listening look like for you if you're going to ask?
Yeah. Active listening, right?
What does active listening look like?
That's good. And then the third question we want you guys to kind of wrestle with tonight is what we see and we experience and we interpret a certain way, right? So when we see things, when we experience things, we interpret them through a lens, right? We all have that lens. But when we seek and we ask the Lord and we gain a new perspective, how has He changed what you are receiving in this season? How has He changed what you are receiving in this season?
Or even your perception of the season itself.
Yes, or your perception of the season itself. It's a very interesting conversation to have, right? Because I'm curious, like right now, how many of our students, and we talked a little bit about this in our staff, how many of our students are already adjusted or adjusting to the new normal? And so they're beginning to input and insert rhythms and habits that still distract from God being able to speak in this moment. So these are great questions, and we hope that you are encouraged. Please stay in contact with us. We want to know what the Lord is saying to you right now. We want to hear what God is doing in your life. We want to partner with you in your struggles and pray with you. If you need somebody to pray with, Megan and I are here for you. So are your chaplains, so are your floor leaders. So you've got a lot of people surrounding you. But contend with these questions. Answer them. Dig deep. Stand on those pillars. But we thank you for being a part and for listening in. Megan, got any closing thoughts?
I would say if something else resonated with you, don't be afraid to ask those questions too. Don't be tied to this, because the Lord brings different things to life according to how we perceive. So, and then from this, you're hopefully between your RD or your group me's, they've sent the links and the time for the conversation that your small group will happen. So just check in with that and figure out where that needs to be and what time that is. And we look forward to hearing from y'all. And if you have anything you want to share with us, please let us know.
God bless you guys.